And thank you, everybody, for attending AppZen on tour in Dallas and attending this session. So yeah, the subject is increased autonomous processing of AP invoices with unified exception management. But what does that mean, right? What does that really mean? We're going to focus on the DIY workflows that Kunal talked about earlier. We're going to talk about the different Mastermind apps that you can use to help increase autonomous processing by managing exceptions. We're going to give you some real live examples, some practical examples that you can use to see how our AI is working for you. All right, so quick introduction, Nick Elhini. I'm out of Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm a CSM. I've been with AppZen for a little over a year. Next point on the agenda, we're going to talk about different AP style points, whether they're related to accounting, related to exceptions. We're going to then go into how we can help you build workflows around those exceptions to increase autonomous processing. We're going to focus specifically on some Mastermind apps in action and how they can work for you. And then we'll save some time at the very end for questions. All right? So when we think about stall points that occur during AP processing, I put them into two buckets. Things that are related to exceptions and things that are related to accounting, right? So accounting could be GL coding, right? So invoice is extracted, but now you have to code the invoice. By show of hands, who here works in the AP function? Okay, keep your hand up if you love coding invoices. I'll talk to you at happy hour. Cool. So one of the very first style points we can talk about is the ability to predict GL coding or extract GL coding for PO and non-PO backed invoices. So with autonomous AP, if it's a PO backed invoice, we can go ahead and code that directly from the PO. And if it's a non-PO backed invoice, based on the feedback you're giving the system through the workbench, it's always learning, it can predict the GL coding from there. Also following in accounting is goods receipts, right? So if you have a policy around three-way match, you're waiting for an individual who receives those goods to update the PO with a goods receipt. Sometimes that can stall the process of autonomous processing, right? Or processing an invoice. So with AppZen, if you have three-way match, if you're waiting for a GR to be updated or a PO to be updated with a GR, the system's gonna do that autonomously and move that invoice from review data into a created invoice and post it to your ERP system. And then the other big one is going to be exceptions. There's a number of exceptions that will occur, everything from PO exceptions to duplicates to suspicious suppliers, and how you can build workflows around those exceptions to once again speed up the process and increase autonomous processing. All right? So we're going to focus a bit on exception management right now. When you have exception management in your workflow, you can increase the processing time of your invoices. You're going to hear us talk quite a bit about cycle time and processing time. To give you some definitions, cycle time means as soon as the invoice comes in to your inbox or into your mailroom to the point it's actually ready to pay, right? So cycle time is going to be longer. It could be 15 days, could be 20 days, could be 45 days. Processing time focuses on the time you're working on that invoice when it's on your desktop, right? We've created flexible workflows, no matter how big or small your company is, to help with exception management. You can set these exception management workflows up globally, which means for every invoice across any supplier or any entity, or you can get more granular if you have a larger organization and you want to focus on exceptions based on a specific supplier. You can configure it only for that supplier. Or if you want to configure exceptions around entities, different business units in your organization, you can do that as well. Or you can do a combination of supplier and entity. So kind of going back to what Kunal was talking about earlier today, creating very, very complex workflows that meet your company's needs when it comes to the size and scale and how you handle exceptions. Some value by handling exceptions in AppZen, you're ensuring vendors get paid in time, right? So if you have a very, very long cycle time, you can be put on credit hold. No one wants that. If you have a very short cycle time, you can take advantage of early payment discounts. By keeping everything in a system, you're ensuring data compliance and accuracy in accounting practices by managing the accounting and the exceptions in AppZen. Any questions before I move on? Cool. All right, so we're going to focus right now on the very specific exceptions that you can manage within AppZen. And once again, you can manage these exceptions globally, so the same rules, the same workflow applies to every exception, or you can get more granular, supplier, entity, supplier, and entity. The first one I want to point out is PO line out of funds, right? So for this specific exception, depending on how you want to handle it, you can build a workflow around that. You can say override it or reassign it. If you decide to reassign it, you can reassign it to a specific user, whether it's a PO requester or another AP processor, or we have the concept of what's called a business user. This is a user within an organization that has very limited rights and can go in and make updates. Some other exceptions that we handle, one I like to call out is non-PO spend threshold. So let's say, for example, you've got a line on an invoice that's not PO backed, something like a tax or freight, right? So it's not PO backed. You can set a threshold on what that amount is, and anything above, like let's say $1,000, will trigger an exception that you can then go through the workflow and either resolve or reject or reassign, right? So as you can see here, there's a number of different PO exceptions and exceptions in general that you can handle within AppZen, and then there's also different ways that you can route that workflow. All right, so this kind of brings everything together. Resolving PO exceptions helps you increase autonomous processing. As you can see here, you have an invoice, you've got a PO, we're doing the matching. If there's a PO exception, whether it's maybe a line or the PO is out of funds, a receipt's missing, if you're doing a three-way match and the GR is missing, there's a price variance between the PO and the invoice, or the quantity variance between the PO and invoice. These are all things that are going to cause exceptions where you can route them to different users and get them resolved. So a lot of flexibility to resolve and manage exceptions, specifically on POs in AppZen. All right, so we talked a bit about this earlier. These are the workflows that you can configure, specifically on managing any kind of exception within AppZen. So your admin will go through, and they can toggle on and off, which exceptions you want to manage within AppZen. And based on each of those, you can say, do I want to reject it? Do I want to give the AP processor the option to reject it, to fix in the ERP, to reassign it? Are we going to require them to leave comments? And then the next part of a workflow is the action, then who we're assigning it to. And once again, I just want to drive home that no matter how big or small your organization is, no matter how complex your workflows are, we can handle those by setting up a scope around those PO exceptions that will, once again, globally, by supplier, by entity, and by supplier and entity. Any questions before we move on? Cool. All right, so I wanted to walk through an example of, let's say, an invalid PO and how that would work in the system and process autonomously, right? So what we have here is PO not found, triggered an exception, goes into review data. Review data is a status that invoices exist in the system. The AP processor is given the option to reject. So they're going to reject the invoice because the PO is not found. And they will leave a comment, and then it gets returned to the supplier with a message. So that workflow is built in. It's an exception that was managed, and the AP processor is able to go through that, handle it all in autonomous AP. The other one is around GR not found, right? So all the extractions happened in AppZen, all the data from the PO is matched up. The invoice is ready to be created and sent into your ERP system, but for one thing, it triggered an exception because the goods receipt's not found, right? So you have to identify where the goods received, who received them, and update them. Show of hands, who's had to do that? Who's had to track down a goods receipt manually? Right? Not fun, right? What the system's going to do is check back every hour And once the PO is updated with a goods receipt and all the extractions and matching is done, it will then process autonomously, right? So automatic recheck, and it gets processed, right? So these are different workflows, real-life applications of how, with specific exceptions, the system can automate that and increase autonomous processing. It's going to shift gears a little bit. Kunal was talking a little bit earlier about the Mastermind platform and how we can create custom apps and how we have an app library to help with autonomous processing. So here are a handful of Mastermind models that we have around autonomous AP. All right, so invoice extended validation. So within AppZen, there's a handful of validations that occur in the system. One of them is around a suspicious supplier. The other one's around a duplicate. And then if you have our full suite with expense audit, duplicate, and expense, right? But you might want to add additional validations, maybe around currency, maybe around supplier. And with this model, you can add additional validations in the process. So really, really valuable model right there. All right, I'm going to highlight another one, invoice automated assignment. So this allows you to automatically assign invoices based on certain criteria. It could be by supplier. It could be by a block of suppliers done alphabetically. But it gives you a number of options to help auto-assign invoices to the right AP processor. The reason that's effective is because, let's say I work with Heister Yale, and I know with Heister Yale, freight always stays at the line level and never goes to the header level. Well, when I see that in the invoice, I can train the AI not to put it at the header level. So the less touches on the AI, the closer I am getting to autonomous processing. It's also leveraging institutional knowledge that your AP processors have on suppliers and the nature of their invoices. So this is a really valuable app in helping increase autonomous processing. All right, the other one. Oh, did you have a question?
Yeah, question on like how to what it can route it on. Can it route it on based on like certain lines and how they're being coded? Like let's say you have an invoice with like 2 deals and it's like 2 different deals each line. Can you have like 2 different people get routed to get approved now because of like you're seeing the line level coding of a deal?
So I think that's more along the lines of workflow related to maybe some PO exceptions. This is just once the invoice is ingested, which AP processor it's sent to, right? And then if there's a PO exception, yeah, you can then go ahead and route the line to a specific individual in workflow. And if there's an exception related to that line, I guess is that question, right? Yeah, sure. All right. QR code validation. Another example from earlier today, I think we saw an invoice in India where there's a QR code, right? And what a QR code validation is going to do is going to go ahead and scan that QR code and get all the information pertaining to that invoice from the QR code, then compare it to the actual invoice. If there are any issues between what is read from the QR code and the invoice, it's going to be called out in review data and allow you to build workflow around resolving that issue. So great model for validation. And here is just a quick use case for that. Another one I want to talk about is a custom model. So I've got a customer, and they resell parts. And I don't know if you all know this, but if you resell a part, you don't pay taxes on it. And the invoices will sometimes come in with a tax. And they said, hey, we don't want to have to go in there and zero out the tax. It's too many touches. It's not making the invoice autonomous. Everything else is extracted. But that one issue is we have to erase the tax. So we don't pay taxes on parts. So we sat down with them and we created a custom Mastermind model that takes taxes out of the extraction, and that increased their autonomous processing rate. These are examples of one-offs based on your business that we can create different ways to increase autonomous processing. All right? How does it know it's a parts invoice? It won't. They won't, but a majority of their invoices are parts. So it's something they said, 98% of our invoices are parts. The other 2%, we'll deal with it later. Yeah, but just an example of, yeah, how it would work. Yep. bring it on home. So exceptions in voice handling, exceptions in processing invoice exceptions in invoice processing hampers autonomous processing, right? It causes a lot of human intervention. It takes a lot of time to identify different users. What we're allowing you to do is build some workflows around that, automate some processes around that to streamline it. Once again, we allow you to manage workflows, and you can build scopes out, which help you really get more prescriptive based on the workflow and the exception for your organization, whether it's done globally or a smaller one, and all the different workflows for exceptions apply to every supplier, every entity, or specific suppliers and entities. Mastermind apps can help lead autonomous processing. We walked through some examples where the app is used to streamline processes. And then for the example where the customer is not paying taxes, we created a very specific custom Mastermind model to help them as well. So that is all I have.